who is the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Labor Relations Institute, or LRI. How are you, Russ?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. So, tell us, what does LRI do?
Well, LRI is short for the Labor Relations Institute. It is a firm that specializes in positive employee relations. It's the largest and most successful firm of its kind in the United States. We deal with companies that all across the nation that are trying to work on the best employee relations they can with their companies. I like to call our clients the Fortune 5 million, and some of our clients are some of the biggest corporations you've ever heard of, and other clients of ours are mom and pop operations. Pretty much anybody that has an employee base is a potential client of ours, as long as they're trying to build positive employee relations. We work with companies that have unions that are just looking at building the best relationships they can between management and the front line, working under the confines of a union contract. We work with companies that don't have unions, no prospect of getting a union, that are just trying to build the best relationship for team purposes between the management and the front line for productivity. And finally, and probably what we're best known for, is working for companies that are actually being targeted by unions, or even have campaigns going where they are trying to have a relationship between management and the front line without the third-party interference of a union.
Okay, now what exactly is your role with LRI?
Well, I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs. I have a dual role. I'm actually a consultant that works with those companies within the Fortune 5 million, both in training and on the campaigns. And I also work in Washington, D.C., working on labor policy. And in conjunction with that, I am an adjunct fellow with the Competitive Enterprise Institute, which is one of the leading free market think tanks out there in D.C., and I work on shaping policy through writing maybe policy papers, or as I recently did, appeared on C-SPAN, articles that have been published in places like American Spectator and Forbes.
Sound quite busy.
I stay busy.
So, does LRI operate outside the United States?
Yes, we do. That's kind of on two fronts. One of the fronts is we work for many corporations whose parent does business and has employees and operations right here within the United States, but their actual headquarters are outside of the United States. So we travel to those nations, Korea or the Philippines or places like that, to meet with those corporations and working on what they want to do. But probably what you're most interested in is any operations that we have that actually take place outside of the United States. And that's where we go to a company that is wholly operated and owned outside of the United States, working on whatever their situation is. And mostly we're confined in that particular aspect to Canada and Mexico.
How have you gone about marketing yourself to these other countries?
Well, the first thing is just the sheer notoriety of being the size and having the success that we have right here in the United States. You know, like I said, some of the larger corporations know who we are and recommend them to the corporations that they are either doing business with or the places where they're doing business outside of the United States. Other things that we do is we are real big on trade shows, conferences, and seminars. We usually are invited to go to a trade show and talk about labor issues and positive employee relations at those particular trade shows, whether it be a group, electronics group, or a SHRM group would be a good one, which is the human resources type people for all industries, and those have been very successful for us. We also do direct targeting for marketing with individuals that have a vested interest in the type of work we do, because it is kind of a niche. We will target the HR directors, human resource directors for corporations, or the labor relations directors within corporations, or normally we deal a lot with the CFOs, chief financial officers, as well, with several corporations in our deal. So we'll target them and bring them in this and get them to understand who we are and what we can do for them in those fashions. A great deal of web marketing that we do on those sort of things, by providing information that they can use every day in their work, will bring them to us for when they need us.
Okay. So in the past, what have been your primary motivations to conduct business outside the U.S.?
I believe that the first time that we did business outside of the U.S. was in late 2008, and it was a Canadian firm that had a union campaign that was taking place, and they reached out to us. So that was our first introduction to doing business outside of the United States, and not every country is like the United States. There's different situations. For example, most of Europe and other countries, when it comes to dealing with unions, it's not as clear. It's not really the choice of the employees out there, where they actually make a choice to either be in a union or not be in a union, to vote one in or not vote one in. A lot of countries, they're just told as a part of doing business, they have to become a union and become members of the union and pay union dues. So a lot of countries did not have those type of rules, but the countries that do, like Canada, Mexico, England, places like that, obviously those are countries that we'd be interested in looking at. So to answer your question, the doing work outside the United States was something that was requested by another company before we actually started it, and then it became more of a viable situation after that.
Okay, so you've been working outside the U.S. for about 5 years now. Then.
That's correct.
In the first time, late 2008. Okay. How have you gone about determining the pricing, both in the United States and abroad?
Well, it's just like any other business. We price our products at the highest the market will bear. And of course, being here in the United States with our success rate, and our price is not the top, but it's right at the top of the premium that's offered for the type of services that we provide. And many of our services are completely unique that nobody else provides, so that gives us some advantages and things like that. Going outside the United States was a much different situation. For example, Canada was extremely liberal. Kind of like I explained, some countries did not have as much choice. Well, recently Canada has actually become even more conservative than what the United States is in these type of issues. So they just now getting the market for the type of things that we offer, and in so doing, we took a look at firms out there that were close to the sort of things that we offered, which were mostly law firms. So we took a look at what law firms were charging, and we based our rates based on that.
Okay. Now, when you've gone to operate in other countries, have you sent Americans to work over there, or have you hired locals?
Both. And I'll talk about Canada again. Now, Canada has some very interesting labor laws. They have 12 industries that fall under what they call the Canadian Industrial Relations Board. And those 12 industries are industries that cross all levels of the entire nation. For example, TV stations and radio stations, they're broadcasted across several of the provinces, so they are considered part of the Canadian Industrial Relations Board. Railroads, which obviously cross several of the provinces in Canada. Airlines, mining is considered one of those groups. There's quite a few things that fall under the Canadian Industrial Relations Board, exactly 12 industries. However, besides those 12 industries, all other industries fall under the jurisdiction of the province that they exist in. And even if you're a business, say you have a hamburger stand that's in more than one province within Canada, that wherever that particular hamburger stand is at has to go by the laws and the rules of that particular province. So the rules in Quebec or Montreal, which is the province of Quebec, would not be the same as the rules in Vancouver, which is in the British Columbian province. They have different laws and different rules, and they actually vary greatly going across their nation. So we had to have somebody that was not only familiar with the Canadian Industrial Relations Board rules, we had to have somebody that was familiar with each provincial rule, set of rules across the entire nation. We had to have local help for that. At the same time, we sent in an American that was familiar with LRI, our processes, to work with the management and to manage the process all the way through.
Okay. Now, how have you gone about handling compensating these people? I mean, both the Americans working abroad and the locals.
Well, the American working abroad, it's obviously someone we sent in, and they would be paid the way they always were, in U.S. dollars, on payday, very much the same as anybody else in the United States gets paid. The Canadian, being our first situation 5 years ago, we actually asked the person that we hired as the consultant how they preferred to be paid. And in this particular case, they preferred to be paid in U.S. dollars. So we made arrangements to pay them in that fashion.
Were there any unique challenges trying to get that done?
Actually, there were, and of course, we put a great deal of the burden on the person themselves, to be compensated the way they wanted to be compensated. But for them working within Canada and being a Canadian citizen, of course, the Canadians felt like he should be paid, in Canadian money. He chose to actually go across the border. It was in Vancouver. Go across the border into the state of Washington, open a banking account in the state of Washington, getting himself a P.O. box within the state of Washington, and we paid our money, his money, directly into that bank account. And then I guess from there he dispersed it however he had to in order to be able to use his earnings.
Quite interesting. So, now what are the two biggest challenges that you face, that you have faced in other countries, and how have you gone about trying to overcome them?
Well, as I alluded to before, not every country does labor the same way the United States does. So there's just, in some countries, the market just simply does not exist. And I guess the biggest challenge will always be that as political climates change and attitudes change, there's a very real possibility that my business would not be something that is viable in the countries we're currently doing business, or will become viable in other countries as time goes on. Anyway, so the political climate is obviously the biggest challenge. The next biggest challenge is I guess probably like any other business that's not doing business in a location that's opening up, you've got to become known for what you're doing. And in Canada, as I stated, their political climate was actually changing, and we were right at the front of that. So we're growing as their political climate changes, and that's been very successful in that particular case.
Okay, so I guess then with regard to political risk, what services does your company use to gauge that?
Well, and really that's what my job is. As the Vice President of Government Affairs, I was sitting in there because so many times policymakers inside the Beltway, as they call it in Washington, will make policy or either legislatively or through regulation that affects those of us outside the Beltway. And we want to ensure that American businesses have stability. And in other words, there has to be a set of rules that can't constantly be changing that American business can count on in order to be able to hire and employees and maintain the type of relationship that they choose to have with the employees. And at the same time, for employees to have, should they choose, the right to bargain collectively. So when they sent me, LRI sent me to Washington to take over the Government Affairs Division, actually to start the Government Affairs Division, my job was very simple, to take what's going on outside the Beltway into the Beltway so that people could make sense out of it and be able to make policy that corresponds with what American business needs.
Would you say you've been pretty successful in that regard?
I wouldn't. I don't know how you measure success. Obviously, I've been able to open some eyes with certain things that I have been personally a part of, with LRI, especially in the Railway Labor Act, some things in the National Labor Relations Act. I've testified before the National Labor Relations Board on upcoming the ambush elections. But the fact of the matter is that the administration in power is who chooses the majority of the regulatory agencies that oversee so much of American business. And if that particular majority has an agenda, as there is in labor, which just take a look at the appointees to the National Labor Relations Board. These are all former union officers and high-ranking officers. They have one purpose: they want American workers unionized. So they attempt to make regulations that will go in that particular direction. So my job is to open up the eyes of the legislatures and the public at large, so that they don't make regulations that go against the National Labor Relations Act and the spirit of the National Labor Relations Act itself.
Okay, now we're going to kind of reiterate on a little bit of what you just said, but what would you consider the main factors that would constitute a high-risk environment for your business and industry?
Well, I guess the biggest challenge is that we could become Europe. I mean, they would just basically make labor almost a political party, and full-time workers would have to join unions as a condition of employment. That's the biggest risk that's out there. Now, I think that the hybrid in between is, things that we are looking at, where regulatory agencies will try to shorten election periods so that companies can't respond when they get petitions, making it harder and harder for them to be able to defend themselves and let employees know, the benefits of not having a third-party relationship.
Okay. Well, I guess moving on, now in the future, do you see LRI expanding farther outside the United States?
That's a great question. We've had several meetings within our upper executive levels on what our role is outside the United States. We do see LRI doing business in Canada. We do see the possibility of us expanding more into Mexico than what we have. But there is definitely a faction of our particular executive group that does not want to expand outside the United States anymore. They would like to keep. They believe there's enough business here in the United States, and that our laws, we understand and we know them, and we're actually, through myself, obviously trying to make a difference in those laws. And then, of course, there's the other group within the executive group that wants to expand outside the United States, especially as opportunities open up with political climate and so forth, like places like Canada.
Out of curiosity, where you stand on the matter?
I want to expand outside the United States.
Okay. Now, other than Canada and Mexico, where exactly would you be looking to go? Or, well, not exactly, I guess, but where would you have in mind that you could see LRI doing a little bit of business in? Why those particular countries?
Well, positive employee relations itself actually transcends no matter what political climates are, but you have to be able to show the value of positive employee relations to employers in order for it to be able to be successful outside of the United States, and that would be through what you get in productivity. I mean, it's always the bottom line. That's what it really comes down to. It's always about the money. And so our challenges are, especially in the business we are, is leveraging what third-party interference such as unions do. Most of the world at this point in time, there's those opportunities just don't exist with their political climates. So as those opportunities become available, LRI will be watching for those opportunities and will look for ways to expand. But they almost have to happen for us to be able to capitalize on them beforehand. It's not something that you can plan, project, and work towards. It really has to be more of an osmosis type situation where it develops and you blend in with that development.
All right. Well, sounds like good stuff. Sounds like definitely a decision that wouldn't be made lightly. But I guess when the opportunity arises, you just have to make the decision at the time whether to seize it or not. Is that correct?
I would say that's accurate.
All right. Well, it's been great talking with you. Wish you all the best, and I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk with me.
Well, I appreciate talking to you. I hope you and your group get an A on this. And as a matter of fact, will send a message right now to your professor that you deserve an A on this.
I might just have to send you an email then.
Thank you.
All right.